Now speaking, Jennifer Horsley, Senior Vice President, Investor Relations. Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on IMAX's second quarter 2023 earnings conference call. On the call today are Rich Gelfand, Chief Executive Officer, Natasha Fernandez, Chief Financial Officer, and Rob Lister, Chief Legal Officer. We have posted our earnings press release, slide presentation, and historical Excel model on the Investor Relations section of our website. Today's call may include forward-looking statements that are subject to risks and uncertainties that could cause our actual future results to not occur or occurrences to differ. We have provided a detailed discussion of some of the factors that could affect our future results and outcomes in our SEC filings. We have also provided non-GAAP financial measures and their reconciliations to non-GAAP financial measures in this afternoon's press release and our earnings materials. We now turn the call over to Mr. Richard Gelfand. Now speaking, Richard Gelfand, Chief Executive Officer. Thanks, Jennifer, and thanks, everyone, for joining us today. We're pleased to report a historic weekend at the global box office, where moviegoing reasserted itself as an unparalleled cultural and commercial force. IMAX demonstrated its ever-strengthening position at the vanguard of cinema with a $35 million opening for Oppenheimer, delivering a staggering 20% of the film's global debut on only 740 screens. In China, we delivered more than 16% for local blockbuster, Creation of the Gods, on just 1% of total screens, our best ever indexing for China film. And we scored 20% of the debut of Mission Impossible 7 in Japan on just 48 screens. All this combined to lift IMAX to a $46.4 million weekend, the fourth best in the history of IMAX. We drove more than 30% year-over-year growth across revenue, as well as adjusted EBITDA, net income, and earnings per share, including nearly $33 million in adjusted EBITDA and adjusted EPS of 26 cents per share. We grew signings for new and upgraded IMAX systems with 84 worldwide year-to-date, far more than the 47 we achieved in all of 22. And we maintained our record-breaking share of the global box office from 2022, even as more non-IMAX and mid- and low-budget films returned to the theatrical market. Through June of this year, our share of global box office is 3.3%, and this month is on pace to be one of our best Julys ever. In North America, for the first time ever, we've delivered more than 10% of the opening weekend box office for 6 consecutive releases of $50 million or more. We reached our number 1 and 2 biggest animated movies of all time with the Super Mario Bros. Movie and Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse. We now expect to program more than 40 local language films worldwide in 23, up from the 30 to 40 we initially projected. We've had several solid wins in local language in recent months. IMAX delivered more than $10 million with the Chinese blockbuster Lost in the Stars, a mystery thriller we opportunistically added to our slate within a matter of days in the quarter. As I mentioned earlier, we now have 84 signings this year compared to 47 for all of last year. We're seeing exhibitors bring more IMAX to their existing multiplexes globally to drive growth rather than adding more conventional screens. We also more than doubled installations in Q2 over Q1 of 23 with 20 in the period. And that number reflects our continued focus on high-growth markets beyond North America and China. Year-to-date, we've grown our rest-of-the-world footprint by nearly 6%. While there continues to be discussion about China and the economy, we remain bullish. Like many of the world's most successful multinational category leaders, we built a robust business in China over decades, yielding hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. This year, IMAX box office in China through mid-July is up more than 150% year-over-year versus exhibition, which is up almost 60%. Our market share in the first half has been remarkably strong, 4.6% of the overall box office on less than 1% of the screens. We program a healthy mix of local, Hollywood, and international content, particularly Japanese anime. And while Hollywood blockbusters have shown softness in China, our average opening weekend indexing for Hollywood releases has soared to 15% in China, again, on 1% of the screens, up from 10.7% in 2019. We announced an agreement to sell worldwide rights to our forthcoming documentary, The Blue Angels, to Amazon Studios, a first-of-its-kind deal that will see the film go to Prime Video following an exclusive run in the IMAX network. We continue to refine our go-to-market strategy with SSIMWAVE, and we're seeing a positive response with streamers encouraged by our efforts to champion quality in that space. We remain focused on solutions for streamers that allow them to compress video images while preserving optimal quality and creating significant cost savings. We are pleased to report a historic weekend at the global box office, where moviegoing reasserted itself as an unparalleled cultural and commercial force. IMAX demonstrated its ever-strengthening position at the vanguard of cinema with a $35 million opening for Oppenheimer, delivering a staggering 20% of the film's global debut on only 740 screens. We drove more than 30% year-over-year growth across revenue, as well as adjusted EBITDA, net income, and earnings per share, including nearly $33 million in adjusted EBITDA and adjusted EPS of 26 cents per share. We grew signings for new and upgraded IMAX systems with 84 worldwide year-to-date, far more than the 47 we achieved in all of 22. And we maintained our record-breaking share of the global box office from 2022, even as more non-IMAX and mid- and low-budget films returned to the theatrical market. Through June of this year, our share of global box office is 3.3%, and this month is on pace to be one of our best Julys ever. In North America, for the first time ever, we've delivered more than 10% of the opening weekend box office for 6 consecutive releases of $50 million or more. We reached our number 1 and 2 biggest animated movies of all time with the Super Mario Bros. Movie and Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse. We now expect to program more than 40 local language films worldwide in 23, up from the 30 to 40 we initially projected. We've had several solid wins in local language in recent months. IMAX delivered more than $10 million with the Chinese blockbuster Lost in the Stars, a mystery thriller we opportunistically added to our slate within a matter of days in the quarter. As I mentioned earlier, we now have 84 signings this year compared to 47 for all of last year. We're seeing exhibitors bring more IMAX to their. Now speaking, Natasha Fernandez, Chief Financial Officer. Good afternoon, everyone. Q2 was an excellent quarter for our technology-centered business model, with IMAX box office of $268 million, revenue growth of 32% over the prior year, adjusted EPS of 26 cents, up from 7 cents in the prior year period, and adjusted EBITDA attributable of $33 million or 35% of attributable revenue. We saw a diverse mix of content drive box office growth, without the benefit of any mega hits like Top Gun in the prior year quarter. This included hit animated titles not historically the mainstay of IMAX such as Super Mario and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, coupled with good contribution from blockbusters like Guardians of the Galaxy and Fast 10. In China, we saw strong box office market share of 5.2% on 1% of the screens, driven in part by an average indexing of 15% on Hollywood releases. Total revenue in Q2 was $98 million, up 32% from $74 million in Q2 2022, with gross profit of $58 million, which equates to growth of 31% year-over-year. Content Solutions revenue of $31 million comprised 32% of total revenue and grew 6% year-over-year, driven by IMAX box office growth. Technology Products and Services revenue of $64 million comprised 65% of total revenue and grew 49% year-over-year. Signings momentum also continues with 46 coming in Q2 and 84 signings so far this year, 68 of which were new systems compared to 30 for all of 2022. We had 20 installations in the quarter, 13 were sale or hybrid, and 7 which were joint revenue-sharing leases. Adjusted EBITDA attributable to IMAX was $32.8 million, a growth of 29% over prior year of $25.4 million. Adjusted EPS in Q2 was 26 cents, which compares to 7 cents in the prior year period. Operating cash flow through 6 months was $25.9 million, representing significant growth of $31 million from the use of cash of $5.3 million in the first half of 2022. We ended the quarter with $95 million in cash and $262 million of debt, excluding deferred financing costs. Our available liquidity was $420 million, including cash and cash equivalents of $95 million and $325 million in available borrowing capacity under the company's various revolving facilities. Our board approved a 3-year extension to our share repurchase program through June 2026, with $191 million remaining available under our share repurchase authorization. We are also in the process of acquiring full ownership of IMAX China for $124 million. Our strong performance in Q2 highlights the strength of our business coming from the combination of our unique position in the entertainment industry and our high-margin asset-light technology-focused business model. We look forward to reporting on our progress on all these fronts going forward. Roth MKM analyst Eric Handler inquired, Rich, could you discuss what has contributed to the success of Creation of God in the Chinese local language market? What strategies have been employed to achieve such a high market share of 16%? Richard Gelfand replied, I think what we've seen over the past few years is a shift in the way people view IMAX. It's no longer just associated with Hollywood films, but rather with films of all types. We've seen our market share for Chinese local language films increase from 2.5 to 3% to 5 to 6%, which is part of a global trend. People are seeking out IMAX as a separate experience, rather than just an add-on to their movie-going experience. This weekend's film had unprecedented market share, and even in Japan, where anime is homegrown, IMAX is really outgrowing. Roth MKM analyst Eric Handler inquired, what can you tell us about the success of local India content this year? Richard Gelfand replied, Oppenheimer was a major success for us, setting a new record for the biggest opening in India's history. We have 20 to 30 international films planned for the second half of the year, including a very major one that I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember the title of right now. We'll get back to you on that. We're also strategically looking to do more Indian films. Rosenblatt securities analyst Stephen Frankel inquired, Rich, what strategies have you considered to mitigate the potential risk of a protracted strike with alternative content? Richard Gelfand replied, We've spent a lot of time assessing the potential duration of the strike and what content we can play. We don't anticipate any significant impact on our content in 2023, but if the strike continues into 2024, it could affect content in the second half of the year. We're looking at local language films, anime, Indian films, and bringing back existing content like Mission Impossible and Oppenheimer. We also have a documentary coming out this October and another one sold to Amazon for 2024. Additionally, we've greenlit a number of events and are looking forward to putting them together. However, if the strike lasts a long time, there may be content shortfalls. Wells Fargo securities analyst Omar Mejias inquired, what impact could the success of Oppenheimer have on IMAX's 19 domestic and 30 worldwide screens capable of playing 70mm films? Could this be an Avatar-like effect? Richard Gelfand replied, Yes, Omar, we are actively assessing the data. We have already announced our plans to build additional film cameras, and we are looking into refurbishing existing projectors. It has only been a few days since the Oppenheimer release, but we are exploring other possibilities, such as building new 70mm projectors and branding opportunities with IMAX. We are also reaching out to filmmakers to take advantage of the impressive numbers associated with shooting on 70mm film. We are confident that we will find creative ways to leverage this cultural event in the future. Wells Fargo securities analyst Omar Mejias inquired, what is your confidence that Warner Brothers won't move the release date for Dune? What other options are you considering for the replacement for the Dune slot in the back half of the year? Richard Gelfand replied, Dune is currently in the midst of a marketing campaign with trailers and materials already released. Denis Villeneuve presented at the IMAX CEO Forum and the movie has a long runtime in IMAX, up to 5 or 6 weeks. Warner Brothers, the distributor, has stated that the article suggesting the movie will be moved is not true. From a financial perspective, it does not make sense to move the movie as it would incur additional costs and the 6-week IMAX release would be difficult to replicate. Richard Gelfand replied, in Q3, we have a major Indian title, Jawan. This was delayed due to the Hollywood schedule in Q1 and Q2. In Q4, we have 3 big Japanese titles, Godzilla -1, The Spy X Family, and The Boy and the Heron, which is expected to play for an extended period of time. The benchmark company analyst Michael Hickey inquired, Rich, what are your thoughts on the next 3 to 5 years for Oppenheimer? How do you see the business growing, and how significant could SSIMWAVE be in terms of revenue growth? Richard Gelfand replied, I'm thrilled to report that IMAX is in a very positive place. Our projections for the movie have been exceeded, and we've had our best July ever. We're seeing increased market share in North America of 50% pre-pandemic, and we've guided to pre-pandemic levels. We've also had 85 signings this year, 80% of which are new theaters. This means more royalties from exhibitors and studios. We're also optimistic about SSIMWAVE, Enhance, and Live, with SSIMWAVE offering streamers cost savings. Our 5-year plan is very optimistic, and it's hard to be more optimistic about IMAX than we are right now. The benchmark company analyst Michael Hickey inquired, Rich, what opportunities exist for IMAX to increase its domestic presence? Are there any zoning restrictions that could limit growth in certain areas? Could having 2 screens in a complex be beneficial in highly populated areas? Richard Gelfand replied, we're seeing great success in our global expansion, particularly in Japan where our PSAs per screen averages are double North America. We signed a 7-theater deal with Aeon early this year and all 7 are on track to do between $1 million and $2 million PSA a year. We're also seeing success in North America, with 25% of our signings this year coming from the region. We're exploring opportunities for exclusivity zones to drive North American box office even higher. The benchmark company analyst Michael Hickey inquired, Natasha, can you provide an update on installations and reiterate your guidance? Do you think there's any additional color you could provide? Natasha Fernandez replied, we feel good about our guidance and are on track to reach our goal of $541 million in boxes. We anticipate installations to be back-end loaded, similar to our historic years, and we had a great quarter with 20 installations. Our tech products and services segment had strong margins and performance, and we closed out the quarter at 35% attributable EBITDA margin. We are confident that we will meet our guidance for the year. Macquarie Group analyst Chad Bainan inquired, has there been any change in the ramp period for new installations due to the increased local language product and overall strength? Richard Gelfand replied, yes, we have seen a significant increase in the speed of our theater installations in Japan. We signed a 7-theater deal and were able to open all 7 within 6 months, which is unprecedented for us. We used to estimate that it would take 2 to 3 years to work through our backlog, but we haven't done that calculation recently. However, based on our signings this year, it appears that the number of installs is higher than in the past. Macquarie Group analyst Chad Bainan inquired, what progress has been made with IMAX Enhanced products for the upcoming holiday shopping season? Richard Gelfand replied, we are actively engaged in discussions, and the outcome is binary, either we sign or we don't. At this time, I cannot predict the outcome until a deal is finalized. However, there are some promising conversations taking place. If we do sign, I am hopeful that additional opportunities will arise. Barrington research analyst James Goss inquired, have the PSAs in smaller markets narrowed since introducing local language product in IMAX? Richard Gelfand replied, Jim, the recovery in China is still in progress. Quarantines and shutdowns were still in place as recently as December, so it's too soon to detect any trends. We're just getting back to a normal state. Barrington research analyst James Goss inquired, can you provide insight into the contractual terms of your film release windows, particularly in regards to Dune and Marvel? Richard Gelfand replied, yes, we do have flexibility in our IMAX program. We can offer a 2-week window for films, or more time if needed. However, if a movie is moved, there will be consequences, as they would lose the entire window. It would be difficult to replicate that in future years. Barrington research analyst James Goss inquired, can you explain how the flexibility works in terms of forcing the issue? Richard Gelfand replied, Jim, we take our commitment seriously. We are proud to be associated with Oppenheimer and IMAX, and we stand by our word. Mission Impossible 7 was a great movie and we are pleased to have been part of it. Our commitment to quality and integrity has paid off for us. We don't engage in games or gimmicks. Barrington research analyst James Goss inquired, given the reception to your format, do you think an acceleration of the rollout is warranted? Natasha Fernandez replied, Jim, our guidance for the year is 110 to 130. We anticipate that the rollout of our exhibition customers will be heavily weighted towards Q4, however, if we have the opportunity to roll out earlier, we will. Richard Gelfand replied, I believe that when you look at the big picture, IMAX is firing on all cylinders. The signings and installs we have achieved this year demonstrate that investing in IMAX is a sound decision. Analysts should take a look at the Oppenheimer numbers and predictions to determine if buying more or less shares will make a difference in the long run. Barrington research analyst James Goss inquired, what are the long-term plans for the company in terms of growth and expansion? Richard Gelfand replied, Jim, I believe we are seeing an avatar effect this year that is likely to continue. We haven't broken out the individual IMAX theaters, but some have seen Oppenheimer figures as high as $1 million. Many have seen figures of $200,000 to $300,000. If you model the theater side and their potential earnings, it should give you an idea of what to expect in the future. JP Morgan Chase & Company analyst David Karnovsky inquired, Rich, what potential do you see for more content deals with Apple? Have they given you any indication of their slate? Richard Gelfand replied, we are in discussions with Apple and Amazon for additional content. Apple is committed to a theatrical exclusive window, and we have a verbal understanding that more content will be coming from them in the next couple of years. We are also in talks with Amazon for additional projects. Richard Gelfand replied, thank you for your question. We are pleased to report that IMAX has had a very successful second quarter, followed by our best July ever in terms of box office. We have seen a shift from people considering IMAX as a story stock to elements of being a value stock. Our capitalization has decreased, our shares outstanding have gone down, and our EBITDA has gone up. We believe this puts us in a very attractive position and we look forward to updating you with more good news on the next call.